and I will start to go through some of these.
So Kent, Dawn and I have been monitoring the chat, and we have, I believe, answered most of the questions that have come through that. We do have some folks with their hands raised, so I am going to unmute them. Instead of unmuting, we have 75 participants, so I'll do it as folks raise their hand. So the first question is coming from Commissioner-elect Bradley, and I'm going to unmute him. So Commissioner Bradley?
Yes. My question is, does OANC have any guidance on ANC sharing employees?
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
You
Go ahead.
out.
Can you repeat that a little louder? I apologize.
Yes, I said, does OANC have any guidance on ANC's sharing employees?
I'm not sure we have guidance on that. However, it's not uncommon for commissions to share employees. For instance, 4 of the Ward 2 commissions all have the same support person for their meetings. And it's not coming to mind that I know of another 2 commissions that are sharing a staff person as their technical support. So it's permissible.
Thank you.
All right. So Commissioner Shapiro, Roberta Shapiro, you are unmuted. You had a question? You just took your hand down. Okay. We'll go to the next question. This is Commissioner Kramer. You are unmuted.
Some small questions. We're a continuing commission, not a new commission. We just had a discussion or a debate about a consent agenda, the mechanics of a consent agenda. Does the first, about 3 questions. The first is about does the consent agenda, can you discuss just for introductory purposes the subject on a consent agenda? In other words, you have 5 things on a consent agenda. Does somebody get to just describe what the items are as they come up?
Generally, the purpose for a consent agenda is not to have deep discussion. When it's introduced, the chair may, and I do think it's advisable when you get to the consent agenda, at least announce what the individual items are, and they may give a 1 or 2 sentence description of what they're about. But beyond that, items on the consent agenda generally aren't for discussion.
That's perfect. That's what I meant. Not a discussion. Just somebody has to say what it means, because we've already put out the agenda with a tagline on it. Okay. The second thing is we have a seat open. I should know this, I think, from Robert's rules, but anyway, we have an open seat. Is the quorum the total without that open seat, or is the quorum considered part of the full body with a vacant seat?
Vacancies don't count against quorum. If you have a commission of 6 people, typically you would need 4 for quorum if all the seats were filled. But if there's 1 vacancy, you would need 3.
Good. Okay, thanks. That's great. And all the financial things, since we're a continuing commission, I assume none of that, all that sort of carries through. So we have a bank account. We don't need to open up. We don't need to do anything else other than get the signatures straight. I think that's it. I think that's it. Thank you.
You're more than welcome.
Okay, we're going to go to Commissioner-elect Glover. You're unmuted.
Yeah, thank you all for having a meeting, this orientation. This is my first time, as many others, on here. So for 7C01, I still do not know all the neighbors other than getting them to sign for me. Are we supposed to have, like if I have a 7C01 meeting at Deanwood Recreation, can I schedule a monthly meeting to meet the residents? Or do they all have to come to the whole entire 7C monthly meeting? Because I really need to know the membership more.
Different commissions do this different ways. Some commissions, or some, shall I say this, some single member district or commissioners do have monthly single member district meetings to learn from their learn from their neighbors. Others don't have monthly meetings per se, but they do have special community meetings whenever there's a big issue that needs to be considered. They may have special issues if there's, say, a school modernization project that's coming, or a rec center that needs to be redeveloped, or if there's a large planned unit development. So there are multiple ways to get the input from your neighbors. You can have a monthly meeting. As I said, many commissioners do. But no, there's no requirement for them all to come to the one meeting every month, to be that their only way to learn and hear from you.
Yeah.
I would also add one more thing too, that I didn't say earlier, and that's think about your constituency and how to get information to them. It's easy to send emails to a listserv, but we know that there are many communities where people just aren't on listservs, or they don't have email, or they don't like to communicate that way. So, for instance, if there were a DDOT project in your neighborhood and it was going to impact a street, well, you may not need to do this for the entire single member district. You may want to post flyers or distribute flyers to the doors of the impacted neighbors so that they know that there's going to be a meeting, so that you can have that conversation.
Okay, so the money that you mentioned earlier to certain new districts, do I have money for 7C01 individually? And will the budget be required for me to put up like signs in my area for our neighbors to check out what's going on?
Sure. And Don, you can follow up on me if I misspeak on this one, but only the funding for commissions is only for the commission. It's not for each single member district. However, the funds for the commission can be used to put flyers down one street in the commission. It's there for all the commissioners to use equitably. So depending upon the need and where that expense makes the most sense, 1 month you might put flyers or do something in your single member district, and another month one of your colleagues may be using funds for similar communication efforts in their single member district.
All right, thank you very much.
The next person is, I don't know who it is, it's caller. The numbers are 202-213, and I'm going to unmute you. If you can identify yourself, that would be fantastic.
Thank you. This is Ulysses Campbell. I am the current commissioner for ANC 4C03, but have been elected to the redistricted ANC 4E05. And I had a couple of questions. One, I just wanted to say, I don't know if anybody else had a problem. I had horrible access issues in terms of trying to get on this webinar. That's why I ultimately had to log in via my telephone, because I wasn't able to get in. I had a desktop computer, and I'm not sure. At least one of my colleagues had a problem also, because she called me. So you'll see several emails from me, and Kent, there is a voicemail on your cell phone, and there's also a voicemail on the office phone. Anyway, so did that. I was curious, because you mentioned in terms of opening the checking account, and we don't get the allotment money until we've got the checking account open. So since most banks, as far as I know, want you to present yourself with some money, I'm assuming that we're going to have to, pull $5 out of our own pocket to be able to open the account, and then just get that out once we get the allotment? Or is there something else that we should do to open the account?
That's a great question. Don, I'm letting you take that one.
Yeah, no, well, I think it actually depends on the bank. And what I will offer is that once you have your security fund paperwork and the ACH form completed, that's all that we really need to get those funds transferred. So in the event that your bank says that you at least have to have $5 to open the account, then unfortunately or whatever, yes, you'll have to put up the $5, but then you'll, obviously be reimbursed for that.
Yeah, well, and with the participation in the security fund, if that's what we opt to do instead of getting bonding, because, since we don't have funds, one of us is going to have to pony up the $25 and then get reimbursed for that as well.
Well,
So,
no. Once you elect officers, you have the ability to write a check. You understand?
Well, yeah, but we're a new ANC. We don't have an account at
Are you
all.
missing anybody?
Oh, I'm hearing some feedback in the background. But
Yeah, that's not in my background.
okay. Once you elect officers, you then have the ability to write a check.
Yes, but what I'm saying is I'm with 4CO3 now. I'm with a newly created ANC, which is 4E05, and we don't have a bank account.
That's what I'm trying to explain to you. Once you elect your officers, complete your security fund paperwork, write your check for the security fund. Remember, you're going to write your check, and then you're going to give that check to the auditor's office. Okay. Meanwhile, while that's happening, and along with that, you're going to give us your ACH debit form. We're going to work in the background to get all of that set up for you, and then money deposited into the account. So I want to be clear. You are able to write a check once you've elected officers. You're able to write a check for the security fund.
Yeah, Ms. Dickerson, I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, but I just want to make sure that we're not writing a hot check.
No. The check won't. No, we're all working in tandem. Okay, so no one's going to have you have a.
Yeah, so you're saying the auditor is not going to deposit the check until they know that funds are available in the account.
Correct, because we're all working in tandem.
Okay, all right, okay. Thank you. I understand that there is now OANC guidance on debit cards.
Correct.
So, yes, all right. Well, that's wonderful too. Okay, hey, Kent, I noticed during your conversation about notice requirements, because I had been under the impression that we had to use 2 of the 4 methods, and you said we needed to use 1. Did you misspeak, or do we only need to use 1 of those 4 methods to properly notice the meeting?
No, you're correct. You need to use 2 of the 4. What's difficult, I think, for the new commissions is 1 of the 4 doesn't really work because it relies.
Yeah, because we have to have had a meeting already.
You have to have had a meeting to designate what that 4th method is. And I think most commissions ultimately do choose one of their 4 forms of communication through that 4th method. So sorry if that was garbled, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to clarify that.
No, I appreciate that. Hey, so my last question is about establishing an ANC office. And, since I became a member of 4C 6 years ago, this has been a sort of ongoing question because some commissioners, like myself, for example, have availed ourselves of the opportunity to use the facilities of the ANC office for, copying. And of course, I happen to be the treasurer of ANC 4C. So in terms of record storage, I've also used it. But I've got other colleagues who have never visited the office, and they don't seem to feel that there is any necessity for the ANC to have the office. I would prefer not to summarily make that decision for any future commissioners that may come after me. But I'm curious as to what the OA, and actually also my understanding from reading the, it's either the OANC guidelines or DC municipal regulations. There are some requirements for an office, for example, someplace to keep the financial records and the checkbook. But I'm curious as to what OANC's position is on that. Am I mistaken? Do we need an office? What's your feeling on that?
I'm going to, Kathy, I'm gonna pull on you a little bit on that one. but I'll start by saying, I know that there are many commissions that don't have offices, and it doesn't prevent them from functioning. And one of the things that's always been difficult is I know there have been commissions in the past that would love to have offices, and there is this offer that if you ask the mayor's office to help you identify an office, that they are required to look to see if there's government space for you. I have to be perfectly honest in that I've rarely seen it result in office space. So keep that in mind. But I think the primary concern here isn't if you have an office or don't have an office. It's have you designated an appropriate place for the checkbook and the financial records. I think that's the primary concern. Kathy, you may disagree with me, but I don't think there's a requirement per se to have an office, but there is a requirement to designate where you're keeping the checkbook.
Exactly. I agree. First of all, good afternoon to everyone. I agree with you completely, Kent. Most importantly, with regard to the checkbook, which we in the office have just had a discussion about. Secondly, the paperwork. And I think, Mr. Campbell, you and I have been down that road of FOIA. So certain documents that are retained by commissioners must be in a place where other persons can come to view them. If the secretary or the treasurer has certain documents that a member of the public wishes to view, they may not necessarily want that person to come to their home at any particular time of day or night. So it's good to have an office where you can meet the constituent at the office to review the documents, so the documents are in a place where all commissioners will have an opportunity to view them. We've had instances where some commissioners have taken documents home, have retained them in their homes, and have not allowed other commissioners to view that. All commissioners should have access to that office. They should have a key. And I'm of the feeling that when possible to get an office, you have money in your budget for an office. You know, lots of commissioners, and correct me if you think I'm wrong, my colleagues and to Kent, that lots of times we believe that we should save this money and hold this money. This money is there for you to use it for your constituents. You have money for an office. You have money for certain documents, money for certain paraphernalia. Use it for the good of your constituency. So that's just my opinion on offices.
Well, and I would follow up on that too, because Kathy's absolutely right with regards to the availability of records. There may be some records that you wouldn't want to handle in this manner, but it's very useful if you do have a website to post, organize it in such a way where all of your resolutions are easy to find. You could post your QFRs there because they're public records, and anyone who asks for them is going to be able to see them anyway. You'll want your minutes there. So, there's no requirement for you to share records with people in paper format only, as long as they can see the document in question. So it might be, for instance, if you were to choose not to have an office, you could go a long way in meeting that requirement to share documents when asked, just by proactively sharing them in a well-organized website.
Correct. That's correct.
Okay. Well, I again, with the understanding that I am a huge proponent of ANCs having offices, let me just ask you, in the event, because, hey, it's a democracy, and I imagine that our ANC will vote on whether or not we want to have one. I didn't know that about the mayor's office. I've actually been in communication with the Department of General Services regarding ANC 4C's current office space, which is kind of in flux right now, and I'm trying to work that out so that the incoming commissioners next month don't have to worry about it. But if we were to designate some place other than an office, for the keeping of records and so forth, what would be an acceptable type of place to be able to do that?
Something I might offer as well that might be a middle ground. Do you have a small local business in your community that maybe they have an office, it's very busy during the day, but they don't use their space during the night? There might be an opportunity to perhaps go into an agreement with them where for a monthly fee, you're kind of subletting maybe one of the office spaces within their office that could be designated as your safekeeping place. And maybe that would even provide an opportunity for you to have access to a conference room off hours.
That's a good point.
Yeah, I appreciate that suggestion.
Yeah, Don?
And Ken, I was also going to offer, as part of some of the, we've seen in some ANCs as part of a community benefit agreement with some of the developers, they've been asking some of the developers to provide them with an office space in some new development. So that's an option as well.
Yeah, that's actually one that I had considered. There is, a development that I kind of had to go to the mat for before the zoning commission on. And I have considered, in this new situation, approaching them. I mean, that wasn't something, because that was 4C, not 4E. But that's actually something because I will continue to represent that particular area with the development in 4E. And so that's something that I considered. So, all right. Well, thank you. Those were the questions that I had, and I appreciate you all's thoroughness in answering. At some point, I would love to find out why I had the difficulty logging into the meeting. But
Well, we would love to know that too. If you had difficulty, I know someone else did, and we want to get that ironed out before Saturday.
Yeah, no, but again, I appreciate it. So I am going to, but again, that was the totality of my questions. If I think of anything else, and I'm sure I certainly will, I will send somebody an email, and otherwise I will look forward to seeing you guys on January 2nd.
Great.
Thank you.
Seeing you.
Commissioner Campbell. We're going to go to Commissioner Ray. You have a question? You're unmuted.
Thanks for having this. My question, I think this is going to be for Dawn, is around the reimbursements. In the beginning, I imagine that we'll have a number of them, kind of getting things set up. Should we, for your review, should we be doing the reimbursements one check per reimbursement, or could we batch different expenses together and just make sure that you have the proper documentation?
Okay, I think if I understand your question, what works best is as long as a check is in the same category code, that's making any sense. So for instance, if all the checks have to do with the communication service like Zoom, setting up cell phones or something, office phones, which are all communication expenses, creating a website. And if the ANC is paying one individual or reimbursing an individual for all of those different services in that same category, you only need to prepare one check. Did that make sense, or is that answer?
No, it absolutely. You're right. I get your point. If it falls into a different category, then we should have a different check for that category. I've never had a bunch of them at one time, but I imagine that this first go around, we will probably have multiples. In many of them will be communication, but you're right, there could be others, and I'll keep that in mind. Thank you.
No worries.
All right. Thank you, Commissioner Ray. We're going to now go to Commissioner Pinckney. I'm going to unmute you. There you go. Commissioner. Yep, you are.
I kind of joined a little late too with the little challenge getting in. I just want to be clear. The security fund, and you said it's increased to $50. Does that apply to each one of us, or that's just to the commission?
It's a commission level expense, and it's once a year in January.
Okay.
I'm sorry to interject. And just a point for clarification, what the security fund does is it bonds the treasurer and the chairperson. Okay. Perfect. In the event of any financial impropriety. So it's a bonding of the treasurer and the chairperson.
Okay, thank you. Now, in reference to meeting announcement requirements, I understand that there are strict requirements when it comes to the commission announcing meetings, etc. But let's say I want to do a meet and greet so that I can meet the constituents that I represent that are in my boundary. Are there rules for how I have to put out notices about those types of things, or my specific ANC meeting with my constituents?
As far as I know, there aren't any hard and fast rules. I would focus on being effective in your communication. It's
Mhm.
not an official meeting. You're not going to have multiple commissioners there where you have a quorum. You're not going to be voting on things. You are essentially having an informal meeting with your community members to talk over issues that are impacting their quality of life issues. You're allowed to, if you're able to effectively communicate with them 3 days in advance and they show up, that's perfectly fine. And it doesn't have to be, it doesn't even have to fall on a regular day of the calendar. You have a lot of flexibility when it comes to talking to your constituency.
Okay. Now I have a question, and maybe because I haven't read everything, and so much to take in, a little, overwhelming a little bit, but I can do this. I can. What is FOIA?
Oh, a Freedom of Information Act.
Okay, I knew that.
Yep. So it's commonly referred to as FOIA.
Yes.
Apparently, living in the District of Columbia, we love acronyms, so we can't get away from them.
Mhm.
But along those lines, and I'm glad you brought it up because it leads me to introduce something that's more of a general topic that will probably be discussed on Saturday. But that is managing your emails. I would be very structured in your communications while you're acting as a commissioner. Come January 2nd or shortly thereafter, you will all be getting official email accounts that you can use during your official capacities as commissioner. I would encourage you to use those when doing such communications. And it's going to be the primary way that many DC agencies reach out to you. So I would say avoid commingling that with your personal account, avoid commingling documents and sharing documents between your official account and your personal account, because should your commission receive a FOIA request and that there's been a lot of bleed or commingling of the accounts, it will extend to trying to get the documents of relevance out of the personal account. And I think it's just good practice up front to very consciously say, I'm going to do ANC work in the ANC provided materials, and I will keep keep your personal life, keep your private life private. And then it just works much better. And it also helps when there is a FOIA request that we know that when we assist you, we're only looking in one place.
Okay, and I'm glad you brought up the email issue. Is it at all possible, because we know who, the election has occurred, and unless they're still waiting for some that may be contested, they know who we are going in. Is it possible to get the emails set up before we get there? Because currently my personal email is out on the web in addition to my phone number. Okay, so there are some key things that come to my personal email, or people may have already printed the list of the current emails that are out there. So can you help with that?
We will help with that, but we are not going to be able to provide the official emails until after you're sworn in and you're the official commissioner. Technically, those email accounts still belong to the commissioners who are still serving in the capacity for the next 2 weeks. So there's a bit of a dance and juggling act to transition them from one commissioner to the next.
Okay.
But that is the reason. If there were some possible way, you're right. We do know who won the elections. We do know who's coming into office. But right now, until 2 p.m. or thereabouts on January 2nd, there's only one commissioner and one commissioner at a time for every single member district.
Yes, I understand. Well, I can tell you, if I didn't know how to do websites and manage emails, I would understand that. But you know, it can be done, and it's very simple. But process improvements come down the line. The next question I have is about, I was approached to somebody who wanted to donate, to help with, I guess, like refresh if there's a meeting or things like that. Now, I know in terms of campaigning, an individual cannot contribute more than $25. Okay. But during our time, and if somebody wants to donate anything, is that allowable?
Well, I'm going to have Dawn back me up after I put my foot in my mouth, I'm sure. But from my experience, I know that there's the ANC itself cannot use its money for significant food, but for nominal refreshments is fine, but nothing that would constitute a meal. I have seen where local vendors from time to time have donated things, like they have brought coffee themselves. The commission hasn't had to pay for it. I have not seen that is a problem, but when it comes to money, I usually confer with Dawn, because she's the whiz when it comes to money.
Okay. Well, I just don't want to, be in trouble for accepting something that I can't do.
Well, I would also say too, though, think about, is the donation of food to the commission and everyone attending the meeting, or is it to an individual? If it's to an individual, you may want to avoid it, but if it's to the commission and all the attendees, it should be fine. I would also caution, if there is caution, is the donation coming from a community owner who may have an ABRA license coming up in the future? If it is, maybe you don't want to accept donations from them until after that has been addressed. So just look for issues like that, and if there are no conflicts, then you should be fine.
Okay. Dawn?
I'd like to interject at this point, if you don't mind, Ken.
Oh, absolutely.
You made a couple of points. I usually emphasize too, along with what he said, and I've said that to some of you who are on this line now, be very, very hard and fast about what you receive from people. Yes, they like you very much, and they like, especially now that you're an elected officer. Think, why is this person offering this food or this ticket? Why is this person giving me tickets to a gala event featuring persons where you have to get dressed? It is because you are a commissioner. And if you find that is happening, and I saw in the chat, someone pointed out, beware of the conflict of interest laws. If you're receiving something because you are a commissioner, that's a conflict of interest situation. And you don't want to get caught up in that at all. This is for you, Commissioner Pinckney, Commissioner-elect Pinckney, and everyone else who is online. So that's just something to think about. Kent pointed out too, with regards to someone bringing refreshments or bringing in food for the entire community that's sitting in there, for everyone in the commission, bringing enough food for everyone, not just something for the commissioners, that's fine. The conflict of interest rules, the conflict of interest law runs by money. Lots of people get it confused with whether or not someone has a particular interest in something else, where you have this conflict because you work certain places, or this is where you go to for a dance, or this is your good friend. It's the amount of money. Something of value must be exchanged in exchange for your position, for your title, for your friendship, for your acknowledgement, for anything. If they want your title, that's when you want to take a look at that. This will be discussed by Office of Campaign Finance sometime next year, and hopefully all of you, this will be one that Kent believes you should attend. And I think that would be great for everyone. On the other matter, since he brought it up, make sure that you file your paperwork with the Office of Campaign Finance. I believe it's a one-page document. It speaks to the amount of money you may have received, the amount of money you may have spent, and the amount of money you may have left over. I tell everyone who's received any money, you have spent more money then you probably have actually realized that you spent. Point out at the end of that document that money is owed to you. It says whether or not you want that money to go to a foundation of some sort. The money is returned to you for your expenses. So make sure that when you complete that document that you're not in a position of returning monies to individuals who have given it to you. Because you have if you were to check your documents and check what you've done, you've probably have spent that amount of money, and you'd be very thankful for the donation that was given. I'm not saying don't return it, but just in case, check all of your paperwork. The ink pen you bought, you went to Staples for a notebook, the gasoline that you used to stand outside to get folk to vote for you, along that lines. So it's one document. I think it's due 6 months after the election. I'm not sure, maybe 90 days. I'm not sure, but it's due. It will be due with the Office of Campaign Finance, and and Wesley Williams in that office will be more than willing to help you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Commissioner-elect Pinckney. We're going to move to the next person, which I believe is, I thought they were here. Okay. Which is Commissioner Footer. I'm going to unmute you. You are unmuted. Commissioner Footer?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
We certainly can.
Great, okay. Going back to the email accounts, one of the things that's been very helpful, I know, in transitions is just having the history of emails. It's kind of helped smoothing over the transition. For us that are going to have new emails, is there going to be an archive of some of these commissions that have been kind of broken up so that we can go into them and try and find previous conversations that might be helpful? Or is the system going to know to kind of throw some of these emails into our accounts already? What's the process?
Oh, that's a $152,000 question. We've already reached out to Octo, and we know that with a significant increase in single member districts, in addition to the 6 new ANCs, and coming off of redistricting, which has impacted some areas a lot more than others. What the plan is, what we've kind of outlined and we're working towards is, if a single member district, for all intents and purposes, has just been renamed to a new SMD, whether or not it's in the same commission area or not, we will be attempting to update that to the new designation. But in essence, that account is an old account. When possible, we are doing one of two things. If the commissioner who is leaving wants the emails retained for the incoming commissioner, we will do so. In fact, I think our default is, where it makes sense, we are going to migrate, is the word I'm using, the legacy emails to the new account. When specifically asked to not do that, or in situations where a single member district today might now be in 2 equally divided single member districts, or more than 2 single member districts, the emails in that account will be archived unless we are directed to which particular geographic area or which part of the new SMD that they should be migrated to. So in that regards, I would say, look at your SMD, might want to see what current SMD best aligns with it, or where you see the issues within your commission area, like the hottest issues that may come up in the next 2 years, which SMD they're currently in, and we could help map it that way. But when you have, for instance, the current SMD that's equally divided, we have no idea how, which one of the 2 new SMDs it should go to. But we are in a very, I'll say robust. It's a lot of work, but we have at least 4 scenarios mapped out as to how to realign the single member districts from their old designation to their new designation, or to a completely new commission area. But the long and the short of it is, we're going to try to keep that email history as much as possible and attach it to the new designation. I feel like I lost Commissioner-elect Footer.
Okay. I don't see him on here, or his hand's not raised anymore. So if he comes back, we'll get him. Let's go to Commissioner Sycamore. You're unmuted.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Hi. So that's actually really good to know, Ken. Thank you so much for that information. Because my current SMD is made up of 5 old SMDs, so I'm going to be really looking forward to all that. My question actually was with Ms. Williams. As far as the paperwork you were talking about earlier, I didn't accept any campaign donations. I just used my own money. Do I still need to fill that out and just put a campaign donation of 0, or do I need to actually put the numbers that I have personally contributed to my own campaign?
First of all, yes, you still have to fill out the form. That is how the Office of Campaign Finance really tracks you. It's sort of like a registration for you as a commissioner and for the form. Put down the amount of money that you spent. Make sure you keep your receipts, and that's for everyone. Keep your receipts. The receipts are not required with the form, but keep the receipts in a separate place or in another spot in a folder. You never know. You may receive a contribution from someone in a couple of months who would say, listen, I know you spent a lot of money for your campaign. Here's $25. That's something you would have to go back in a minute, and that's money that would go into your pocket for monies that you spent for your campaign. It happens. It doesn't happen often, but it happens. So yes, you want to be as specific as possible because you never know. Thank you for asking that question.
Yeah, no problem. And thank you all for all your hard work. It's so nice to see this office running so effectively, and it's all because of your hard work. So thank you all.
We enjoy working with you all. Can I also want to interject something else with the, I think I saw it either as a chat and one of the ladies may have answered. I know by throwing out Freedom of Information Act, we seem to have gotten a lot of comments on that. There will be training of Freedom of Information Act. But the most important thing, and I ask my colleagues and for Ken to interject if they wish, everything you do must be transparent. Keep it open. You don't, if you use a personal phone, which I think we all advocate, do not try not to use your personal phone for any ANC matters. If you do, make sure you're able to find that material just in case someone wants to see it. Every receipt, every invoice, according to the ANC law, we've had this complaint from other commissions. An individual is entitled to see the invoice for the $5 that you put in for the security fund. All of your documents are open to your constituents. Everyone can see it. There should be no reason for Freedom of Information Act upon ANCs because everything you have is open. Persons should be able to see it. And usually what we've had, unfortunately, is where we have it with persons who are talking to contractors on their own, who are not being open about the conversation. So please be very, very much aware of that. Lots of times, and we ask that you mention this to your constituents, when individuals call our office and send us requests for Freedom of Information Act, we always say, have you tried to speak with the commissioner? Have you tried to talk to the commission? And of course, it helps that the commission is also very collaborative. So what is it you wish to see and to show it to the individual? They just want to see. They just want to see because there's absolutely nothing that you have that anyone can actually want to. There's no Bernstein matter going on. No one is not trying to make an article for any paper here in the city. Just be transparent and just be open with your documents. I wanted to mention that.
Well, thank you.
Thank you, Kathy.
I wonder, who is the FOIA officer in the OANC? Oh, it's me.
That's right. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, I want to say something. I want to say something in support of what Kathy said too, though. I think it's very healthy to look at your time, your term of service as being very transparent at the beginning. And frankly, if you're very responsive to the people in your community and you're very willing to share documents when they ask for them, you can avoid a FOIA very easily. Very easily. Honestly, from my experience, there was virtually nothing that I can think of that if I was asked when I served as a commissioner that I wasn't willing to share. But I would also say too, it's also healthy to think about when you're communicating in your emails. You keep in mind, is this something, am I saying things, am I phrasing it in such a manner, or am I using language that would be appropriate, that if someone asked to see what my email said on this matter, that I would be comfortable sharing it. I was always keep that in mind too, just as a best practice.
Excellent.
Great. And as we said, there will be FOIA and
Yes.
training once January. I think we have it for either the end of January or early February. So look forward to that. Okay, we're going to move to Commissioner-elect Padro. You are unmuted.
Yes, so I am a former 20-year
Yes, you are.
in 2 different wards. And when we transitioned from ANC 2C to ANC 6E, funds from ANC 2C and ANC 6E were transferred to the new 6E. And I know that this fall there was some discussion with Ward 2 council member about how to proceed, but Ken, perhaps since your arrival, you've been privy to where that ended up. How are we handling divvying up the spoils of ANC 6E is the first question. I can hold questions until you respond.
Yeah, the shorter answer is they aren't divvying up the spoils of the former commission. The council decided that rather than go into the funding or the funds that each current commission has and trying to figure out how to reallocate those, instead they chose to designate startup funds to the new commissions. And that's what I was referring to earlier by startup funds, but they don't currently have any plan to reallocate funds that are in an existing ANC's bank account.
Well, that's certainly a change from past practice, but so are those startup funds separate from the normal allotments, the quarterly allotments?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. All right, that's helpful. Number 2, on the ANC emails for new commissioners, where we have brand new commissions that did not exist previously, no current commissioner has those ANC email accounts. So could Opto begin signing those?
Well, I'll give you an example. That's a personal example on my end. So yes, we do need to create completely new accounts. And I think we're going to need to do that as a first step. And then once those accounts are created, for instance, I currently live in 1A08, but it is almost identical to what will be the new 1E01. So once the new account is set up, then the historic material attached to 1E08 could migrate to 1E01 rather than have that go to a new SMD with that number that's maybe 7 SMDs across town.
Right, but I guess what I was trying to get at is there was an issue or a suggestion that because there could be current commissioners that had a specific account, that it wasn't possible to assign those accounts now and give incoming commissioners access to those. For example, there is no 2G02, which I will be in January. So that account has to be created. No one's access to old emails is going to be impacted. Could not Opto create that account and give me access to it?
So
I'll let you go, Gail.
no, so I was just going to say, just having numerous discussions with Octo, new accounts will be created. All the accounts will be created once the commissioners are sworn in. These accounts, the anc.dc.gov is a government account and therefore has to be tied to an actual government individual, which you all will be once you are sworn in. So even though you may be assuming a ANC that has never existed before, like 8F01 or a 3A01, or 8F01 that never existed, you will not be able to access that account until after the swearing in.
Okay, that's understandable. Two more points. There was a suggestion earlier that the deadline for filing the Office of Campaign Finance Form 18 was 6 months after the election. No, it's 60 days
Oh,
after
60 days.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
of the election. So
Right.
that's in early June.
Thank you, Commissioner
Yes.
Electrado. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. It's right.
And lastly, the suggestion that to avoid FOIA issues, commissioners shouldn't be using any phones other than ANC phones. The 20 years that I was a commissioner, we never had ANC phones. Everybody used their home phones, cell phones, their office phones, whatever phones they had access to. So is there a suggestion that the commission should be providing a commission phone to each commissioner? Is that how you're suggesting we address that? Otherwise, I can't see how we get around using non-commission phones.
Well, you want me to go with that one, Ken?
Sure.
Okay, in some instances, and I think, and Dawn may add to this, in some commissions, they provide cell phones. We've had a couple of commissions who vehemently avoided them completely, and individuals use their personal phones. We've had other commissions where they had their cell phones that were offered by the ANC, and all of the information was on those cell phones, which made it much easier in FOIA matters. We did not have any requests from your ANC when you served the 20 plus years when you were a commissioner. That's true, but there were no FOIA requests at that time. But we've had quite a few. We have to make a report to the Office of the Mayor, and I do believe in the past year alone, we may have had 10 to 15, that's a lot. That's a lot. And a lot of it could have been avoided. I believe that if commissions had been a bit more collaborative with the requesters, if they just shown the requester what they wanted instead of being belligerent and says, no, you can't see that. No, that's what we've had there.
I agree, and that's how I've, I guess, avoided.
That is how you avoided it. I defer to Dawn. I see Dawn has hand up.
Well, no, what I'm going to share is because the chat was mentioning Google Voice, and Kathy or Gail, would you all speak to the effectiveness of or the impact of Google Voice with respect to FOIA? I mean, that's also a way of dealing with the cell phone matter, but also I know that Google Voice keeps a transcript.
Correct.
So
Correct. So yes,
you're right, Dawn. Instead of having another cell phone, Google Voice is a wonderful alternative. You're correct.
yes, that is correct. And I believe Freetone is another alternative as well that also keeps a transcription of those calls. So you get that off your personal phone, and then you get your Google Voice, and that's what you can publicize to the community to utilize. So you don't have to get another phone, but you have essentially a different number on that phone.
Excellent. Sounds like a good suggestion. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to move to the next thing. Next commissioner, Commissioner Stevens, you're unmuted. Well, you will be in a second. There you go.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for having this training session. It's been very, very helpful. Very quickly here. So I would like to bring cupcakes from a local baker to the Joseph's House Hospice Center and to our firehouse. But on Christmas Eve, and Christmas Eve is speeding towards us, and I'm not even sworn in. Is it okay just to use my own money and not even be reimbursed and just not use ANC phones, because it sounds like a lot of complicated stuff. Yeah. So that's okay.
That's okay. Use your own money.
You're not wearing your commissioner hat by doing that.
Yeah, you're not a commissioner yet.
I'm gonna have a Santa hat on, so no commissioner hat, only Santa. Okay, cool. All right, next question. I guess a little more of a serious question. The other one was too, but anyway, this is sort of procedural, I guess. Okay, so there was a mention. I went to a seminar when I started to run for commissioner, and there was a mention there would be ANC liaisons with each DC government agency. Do those people exist? And if so, are we going to be provided a list of those people with contact names, numbers, that kind of thing?
I would say short answer, yeah, yes and yes.
Great.
Yes.
We are
Outstanding.
currently in the process of double checking the contacts with the departments to make sure that the liaisons we have are still the liaisons. I think that we're going to see about 95% of them are the same.
Yeah, thank you.
But
Correct.
people do move on. It's the end of the year, and we just want to make sure that we give it one fresh pass before we distribute it to all of you.
Yes.
Great. That makes sense. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, we're going to move on now to Commissioner Lopez. You, hold on, you are unmuted now.
So I am a commissioner in ANC 6E and will be transitioning to ANC 2G. We have a number of ongoing cases before ABRA, and I imagine other commissions might have ongoing cases before other commissions, BZA, Office of Planning, Zoning Commission. So I spent some time looking at the succession language in the DC code because there were some questions about whether or not ANC 2G would have standing to continue an ongoing protest after January 2nd, and was looking for some clarification because the succession language in DC code section 1-309.51 says that each ANC shall be the successor in interest with regard to any assets, obligations, or agreements. But standing in an ongoing proceeding, I don't believe is an asset, an obligation, or an agreement. So I know that ABRA was having some questions about this, and other agencies might have questions about ANC standing in ongoing proceedings that may transition over the redistricting.
Well, yeah, Gail, you had your hand up. You look like you wanted to.
Well, I could answer only because I've been in discussions with both the Office of Zoning and the Board of Zoning Administration, BZA, as far as that. The legislation for the redistricting, there's a little paragraph at the end that everything moves with the new commission, right? So if I don't know, you're in 2E, a 6E, if you had a zoning issue on an address, say 100 Main Street, that was in 6E, and after the redistricting, 100 Main Street is now in 2F, it will transition to 2F. The notifications that we've been getting from the Office of Zoning indicate those, and so they indicate the current commission and then the successor. And what our office has been trying to do for everyone that comes by my desk is I send out an email to the current commission, letting them know the address, and then to the in addition to the new ANC commissioner. And if there is no commissioner there, I've been doing homework and looking for commissioners that are transitioning, that are sort of in both, so that everyone is sort of aware of what is going on as we move into 2023. To date, it's been really successful in terms of commissions that the address was in prior to 2023, and then commissions where it's going into becoming in 2023. And it seems as if those commissioners are talking to each other and the commissions are talking to each other. So that's how we're handling it on the zoning side. So I don't know if that answers your question.
I guess there's still some questions at ABRA, or at least the ABC board had some questions about whether ANC 2G would have standing in an ongoing protest proceeding, because it's a protest, so there's no agreement in place, and it's not an asset, an obligation. It's standing, right? It's standing to protest, and the protest deadline in these cases have passed, so ANC 2G would not be able to submit a new protest. but it's unclear whether we can continue to hold standing for a protest that was submitted by 2E on a proceeding that will extend across the calendar year.
You know, I'd be happy to reach out to ABRA and just get clarification from them. My understanding was that the standing would convey to the new commission area, but I'm happy to talk to ABRA to see if they have any concerns, because you're right. In my opinion, that not that ABRA asks me for my opinion, but in my opinion, it would almost seem to break the notice requirement of all of a sudden before there was a resolution that all of a sudden there was a new commission that hadn't been noticed. So let me check with them and see what their thinking is, and then we will have clearer guidance on that. But my understanding was that because the new commission is a successor to the old commission, that any actions that the old commission takes in December or before that has not been resolved, though those actions are still standing and adopted by the new commission, unless the new commission has a public meeting and decides to take different action.
I agree. I agree with you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Lopez. We're going to go to Commissioner Dickerson. You are unmuted. Commissioner Dickerson, are you still there? Oh, let me try to unmute you again. I apologize. Doesn't look. There you go.
Can you hear? Yes, can you hear me now? Okay.
Yes, sorry.
Great.
I think that was on my end. I apologize.
That's quite all right. Good evening, everyone. My question, and please, because I know we're over time. If you've answered this, just say and I'll go back to the recording. So very quickly, regarding something that had been mentioned much earlier regarding when during virtual meetings or even in-person meetings, we can hold the conversation. There's been some conversation in our ANC about having the chat disabled and having the participant names disabled, having all of these things disabled, because, and my understanding, this is actually across multiple ANCs, there have been some threats and abuse of language used during these meetings within the chat, so on and so forth. So some ANC chairs have decided to limit interaction with the chat, etc. So my question is regarding what we were talking about in, being able to limit conversation. What are the rules around that? And if that's too broad of a question, I understand. But my understanding is that is why some of the chairs have been limiting certain, the chat being disabled and such, because some of the language has become abusive.
I guess I can lead on that since I have had many conversations about that in the last 3 weeks.
Okay.
So I think a lot of it has to do, it has to do with a couple of things. First of all, how are you setting up the webinars? Are you setting them up as webinars with panelists and attendees, or are you setting it up where everybody's a panelist and there's no real way to moderate who's speaking and when? I think good practice is of course, use a webinar version where it more closely resembles the way a meeting should function in Robert's Rules. I think chat can be distracting and it can be abused by people who may want to share things that aren't germane to the issue, or if they have some inappropriate language they want to we all know about Zoom bombing and things like that. So I kind of look at it this way. If you were meeting for a commission monthly meeting in a public space where people were physically attending, you wouldn't allow people to stand in the back of a room and just say anything they wanted to say whenever they wanted to say it. Right? According to Robert's Rules, you need to be recognized. Once you're recognized, you can say what you need to say. It gets addressed. You thank them for their time, and then you move on and recognize the next speaker. So in that context, there's no requirement that chat be enabled. If the commission wants to enable chat, they're welcome to. But I would say at the beginning of the year, since we're going into a new term. Also, if you make a decision like that, you may want to reduce it to writing. Like you may want to explain what your decision-making process was. Make sure that it's either in a resolution or a letter to the file or whatever it is in the standard operating documents, that is your way of like your commitment to the community of how you are going to run your meetings. And the reason I say that that's not, or let me flip that. The reason, going back to my thinking that it closely resembles Robert's rules, because with chat disabled, people, much like this meeting today, they can raise their hands, they can be recognized, they can take the floor, we can have the conversation that needs to be had. And no one has been removed from the meeting, and no one has been denied their opportunity to speak. So it still allows for full public participation, much like an in-person meeting. So that's kind of my thinking.
So I appreciate that. Yes, I just want to make sure that it was legal to disable the chat. And I think the last thing I'll say, the only difference I think is with a public meeting versus virtual, if you use the webinar function, there is no transparency of if people are actually being selected. If you're in person and someone raises their hand and then they're ignored, everyone in the room can see that you're ignoring that person, right? Or that you cut that person off as they were still talking. So there's no, it's less public, I should say, when you're on a webinar function. But I think the protection of our constituents and our commissioners is of a higher value in this instance. So.
Well, and I'll follow that up too by saying no commission or commissioner should feel that they are required to be abused or disrespected because the chat function is on.
Right. Right.
I would also say that I recognize that a virtual meeting does have its limitations, much like an in-person meeting has the limitations of community members who have very strong opinions but don't have the ability to come to the meeting is a limitation. I would say we're all hoping that within the next several months that we'll have better guidance, and I won't say several, but maybe in this near future, we'll have better guidance and ability to go into a more hybrid scenario where with the right technology, we don't have to worry about people not knowing who else is in the meeting.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Commissioner Dickinson. Okay, we're going to move now to Commissioner Rockland. You're unmuted. And I just want folks to be aware of the time. It is 5:16.
Brand new commissioner. The first, and I appreciate all the things that I've learned and your availability. I've been looking for the link for the handbook and can't find it. So if you could put that in the chat or somehow make it available. The big question I have is much of what has been talked about has brought the concern to mind about liability. In my previous profession, I had insurance for malpractice. Would you discuss the need for and the possibility of adverse events occurring? Good people do bad things with good reason. Thank you.
Well,
okay.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm
sorry. Yes.
No. I think we all have some experience to share on this one. I know that at the highest level, individual commissioners, like if you're concerned about being sued, you can't be sued for making decisions as a commission. Like there's no liability there. You're reviewing cases, you've been asked for your opinion, presuming everyone is using the best judgment they have. And at best, official outcomes of ANCs are advisory. Even where agencies are required to give special consideration to your opinions, referred to as great weight, they aren't required to do what you tell them to do. So at that level, I wouldn't say there's any liability. But I would also say too, some of this goes to, as much as possible, understanding not everybody responds the same way, and conflict can arise from time to time. but keeping the dialogue as professional as possible, being as respectful as possible when addressing even possibly difficult members of the community who really vehemently disagree about perhaps a zoning case that's before you. I think that can help de-escalate some of the interaction. Gail, you may have some insight and others may have some insight.
No, I think you answered that pretty well. So I don't really think I don't know if I have anything else to offer, but you know, I think it just goes back to you know, sort of Kent, what you said about being respectful to not only your constituents, but to your fellow commissioners. And remember that while we are elected officials, we are here doing the best that we possibly can and trying our hardest and, you know, doing it with the best interest in mind. And I think that as long as you do that, I think you're good to go.
You know, one other thing I'll add to that too is the entity that has great weight, the entity that's important is the commission, not an individual commissioner. Now, I understand that many things may come up in the single member district you've been elected to represent, but don't feel like you have to do all of that work yourself. There may be someone else on your commission that has perhaps really great zoning expertise, and that's maybe not an area where you have a strength. If the commission works together and the commissioners all play to their strengths and help each other out, it doesn't have to be as much work as you think it is. And that can also help too, and I'm thinking more towards potential conflicts. If the community only has one opportunity to engage on an issue that might be controversial, a good way to handle that would be to have a special meeting where the community is invited to have much more time to talk about it and engage at a special meeting or a community meeting. If your commission is able to stand up some committees, perhaps the committees could focus around ABRA issues, zoning issues. Those are areas where you automatically have a standing or party status as a commission and where people are very concerned. Think about what you can do as a commission in its entirety to provide the opportunities for people to engage and say what they want or share what they want to share. Because I've found that more often than not, when people are concerned or displeased, what they want most is to be heard and to be understood. And if they only get 2 minutes at an ANC meeting, they don't have that opportunity, and that can lead to some of the misunderstanding later.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner Ruckland. Okay. So Commissioner Crawford, Tonya Crawford, you are unmuted.
Everyone, can you hear me okay?
We can.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. I have to second that it was very difficult joining this webinar. I guess if you don't have Microsoft Edge as a browser, it's an issue. So it took a long time. This is my first time. I'm commissioner-elect, but according to the information that I've read thus far, it sounds like within a 20 to 30-day period, I'm going to have to find officers, a treasurer, something else. I have to put in a request for the security fund or whatever that is. It sounds like a lot has to be done like within 30 days. Although there was a commissioner before me, nothing has been shared or communicated with me to continue as a new commissioner. So I'm hopeful that there is a bit more detailed and specific communication. Everything's very vague, it seems. I'm wondering if there is going to be some reassessment of the information that you're giving and conveying to new commissioners, particularly about the budget. It's very, very confusing to me, even after this webinar. But that's all I have for now. Thank you very much.
No, thank you.
Okay. So it looks like we've gotten through everyone who is.
No, excuse, I'm sorry, Gail. I think I want
go
to get
ahead.
back to what Commissioner-elect Crawford said. Commissioner-elect Crawford, this is not something each commissioner has to do. This is something for each ANC. When you and other commissioners come together into the one ANC, we're talking about, you colleagues, you help me here. We're talking about 6 commissions. Of the 6 commissions, Dawn Dickerson will have before her 6 reports, 6 applications for security fund, 6 sets of bylaws. That's it, not each commissioner.
Yeah.
The Advisory Neighborhood Commission law speaks to commissions. In fact, commissioners are only spoken to in the Advisory Neighborhood Commission law just as members of the commission. So I'm not certain, and I saw in the chat someone was asking per SMD. As a single member district member, you come to ANC meetings once a month or whenever they're being held, and you vote. And as a result of this, and I want to get back to something that was earlier. I forgot the gentleman's name. I believe it was, I forgot his name, who asked about single member district meetings. What you may wish to do, what he may wish to do, is a couple of times a month or once a month, you would hold a single member district meeting, calling all of the people in that single member district who were eligible to vote for you. That is something separate from the Advisory Neighborhood Commission. What Ken has been talking about is trying to glean an idea from your single member district as to how you may wish to vote in the commission meeting. I know I talk fast, and I hope
No,
you
I appreciate that. Actually, his comments didn't weight at all with what I was saying.
Okay.
I'm still very unclear about the process. Again, one commissioner-elect wanted to know what FOIA was.
Right.
You know, so that should be a really good example of just how broad the orientation needs to be.
Oh.
So for someone like me, I don't know the difference between a commission and a commissioner or a district or a SMD. I really don't.
I'll defer to Kent Bass to give you that distinction right now.
Sure. Okay.
And I don't need that. No, I don't need it. I don't need that right now. I don't
Okay.
need that right now. I appreciate it. But what I do want to understand is just where I should look for understanding. I know I can't call someone. So
You can.
thank you.
Yes, you can. You can call.
Okay.
After one of the struggles that we have is that ANC law dictates that you all are not really, give me the right words, Kathy. They're not able to really convene and make decisions prior to being sworn in. So after you all are sworn in, and I'm sorry, Kent, to over.
No, it's
I'm sure
good.
you were going to offer this. You know, the ANC is available to host a session and to kind of help you all walk through some of the more specifics. Okay. So right now we had there are several new commissioners, everybody at different levels of their understanding. So we're just kind of giving you the information to get you going. But we do recognize that once you guys finally get together, you'll have some assistance. We'll be available to assist you all in making sure that you have a very good and productive first meeting.
Okay,
Well,
I appreciate that. I just don't want to miss any deadline.
No, you won't.
I'll add to that I know that there's a lot of information here, and it's akin to asking for a glass of water and someone turning on a fire hose. There's just too much water, right?
That's true.
What we're trying to do is provide as much information as we can before you are sworn in, but this is not going to be the only time we talk. It's not going to be the only time we reach out to provide opportunities to have these conversations. Our phone number is always available to you. Our email is always available to you. We fully understand that as you get settled and start to do the work for your community, there are two things that are going to happen. First of all, you're going to encounter a situation that you've never encountered before and no one on your commission has encountered before. But I guarantee you, someone in another ANC somewhere else in the city probably has dealt with it. And reach out to us. We'll make the connections where we know of them, and we'll get that institutional knowledge shared. The second thing that's going to happen is you're going to get a question that none of us have ever dealt with before. And in those situations, we are going to do what we can to better understand ANC law or guidance to make sure that when you act, you're doing it in accordance with the regulations and guidance from our office, and you can be assured that you're doing the right thing. But we're always a heartbeat away. Like we're always a phone call away. We're always an email away. You are not unsupported, and you're not going to be left alone wondering who to answer your questions.
That's
okay. Thank you so much. So you're not working in your office, or you don't have an office?
We do have an office.
Yeah.
We're at the Wilson Building. Kent is there holding down the fort today. But we do.
We are all in that office Monday through Friday.
Yes, from
202,
10:30 to
727.
4:30.
That's right.
10:30 to 4:30.
Well, that would be a good opportunity too, just to put in, I talked about phone calls and emails. We do have a physical office. You are welcome to stop by. One thing that I will share as a perk, if I can at this time, you will get an identification badge because you're a commissioner. That badge actually does have a chip in it so that you can use entrances to the Wilson Building or 441 down there, where if you have to go to a zoning case, you can use the staff entrance. You don't have to use the other entrance. It's a lot easier to get into the buildings. So yeah, please, if you're here for some other reason, or you're here to talk to a councilman, if you have a question about the ANC, come on by. We'll be here.
And I just want
to be in the office tomorrow.
Yeah. I just want to add, Commissioner Crawford, that our job is to provide training on various and a ton of topics. So we've talked a little bit about BEGA, and that we're going to do FOIA. We're going to do zoning training. We're doing ABRA training. These will all be coming up. Once you're sworn in, we'll be putting out the training calendar. And we really urge you to attend as many of them as you possibly can, because these are the experts that are also going to help and guide you and just provide the wealth of information and knowledge to help you do and be a very productive commissioner.
Yes.
Thank you very much. I don't even know what ABRA stands for.
Oh.
Okay.
Well, you will learn when you come to training. There you go.
Okay.
All right. Okay, so we will now go back to commissioners who I believe still have their hands up. So Commissioner Stevens, I will unmute. No? Okay, you disappeared. Is the caller still on? Okay, 213. Commissioner.
Was that Commissioner Campbell?
Well, let me see.
Muted?
Yes, you are.
Yes, I am still here, and I did have a follow-up.
Okay.
Sure. And actually, it's funny because, well, two things. So the DC1 card that we got 2 years ago, and I'm assuming what Kent is talking about is some new identification card, because I don't believe that the identification card we have now has the chip. Ken, what you talking about is something new, or what?
No, it's the DC1 card.
Really? Okay, because my experience has been that they still want you, and coming into the Wilson Building at least, they don't observe that you're an ANC commissioner at all. They still want you to empty your pockets and go through the whole 9 yards. Every time that I have been to the Wilson Building, that's been my experience.
Well, I will share that your ID card should work on the entrance of 14th Street, just south of Pennsylvania.
Oh, that's right.
If you put your one card up against that scanner, it will recognize it. It will open the door, and then you just show the guard when you come in, and they nod. Yep, you're supposed to be here, and you go your way.
Okay, thank you. Because I think I've been coming in through the DC. Exactly. Yes. Yeah. Now, the other comment I had was just regarding, well, it was regarding FOIA requests, but it was more broadly residents who are irate over very specific issues. And because sometimes people get angry, and particularly in my role as the treasurer of ANC 4C, I have always tried to be as transparent as possible. But my feeling is that accountability as an ANC commissioner is even more important. And in some instances, I'm more interested in being accountable than I am in being transparent. I mean, in matters that don't involve the finances and financial reporting and providing records to residents who ask about them. For example, we used to have regular administrative sessions in ANC 4C until some of these very irate residents over very specific issues decided to make an issue out of our administrative sessions. And, you know, so ultimately we consulted the Office of the Attorney General, and they said that open meetings laws required that we make even our administrative sessions open to the public. Now, my feeling was that, because the administrative sessions were very valuable in terms of us setting our agenda, and we weren't actually conducting any official business or taking any votes in these administrative sessions. And in order to be able to foster an atmosphere where we could speak candidly with our colleagues, I personally was not in favor of members of the general public attending, because there's some things that I don't want to say in front of members of the general public. So, and my feeling was that regardless of whatever the open meetings law says, the whole reason that you have to officially notice meetings is so that you can conduct business, and whatever votes you take are going to be valid. But absent doing that, there's no teeth. They cannot do anything to us. We should be able to meet anyway. But my colleagues were running scared, again, because of people who were irate over some very specific issues. And I just wanted to point out that, I make every effort to try and get along with people and to try and be cordial and congenial, especially with members of the general public, because, you know, these are my neighbors. They are people who in some cases I represent, you know, either in my SMD or more broadly through the ANC. And I don't want to antagonize them, but you know, there's people being heard and understood, and then there's doing what they want. And sometimes I have found over the course of my career as an ANC commissioner that you can listen to somebody, but if you don't do what it is they want you to do, they accuse you of not hearing them, when that's not the case at all. And, you know, particularly, you know, I think implicit bias being what it is, and it's my bias as well as some other people's, I think that there are some communities here in Washington that are accustomed to getting their way. And when they don't get their way, you know, they become very upset. And in some cases, people will use whatever means are at their disposal, including FOIA requests and, you know, speaking out of turn at ANC meetings, you know, in an effort to just antagonize. And, you know, so again, I just point that out. I mean, I still think that you make every effort to work with people and to meet them halfway, or even to meet them 3/4 of the way, or bend over backwards until your spine is getting ready to snap. But, you know, sometimes no matter what you're doing, it isn't enough if you don't accede to their wishes. So anyway, that's, you know, for what it's worth, transparency versus accountability. And, you know, I'll always be accountable for my actions, whatever those happen to be.
Oh, thank you, Commissioner Campbell.
Thank you.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anyway, I don't know how to lower my hand, so, you know, on the phone. So you all are
Okay.
gonna have to
No,
take care of that. Thank you.
I'll lower your hand for you.
And Gail, I was going to say, considering the time, could we maybe
Yes.
take 2 more questions and then wrap it up? I've noticed that some people have had to drop because of the time.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, and these are folks that have asked questions before, so they've had an opportunity, but we'll take 2 more. So Commissioner Kramer, you're unmuted.
Thank you. It's a either a quick question or we can proceed continue offline. I'm concerned about the comments about the phone. I do use a Google Voice. The only thing that I'm aware of in Google Voice that's transcribed is the question. And then generally what I do is I use my own cell phone to respond, you know, to continue the conversation. I wasn't aware of anybody that I know in ANC who actually has bought a second phone to use ANC. So I'm not sure what you were talking about, whether it's common, whether it comes out of the ANC budget, and you know, should we be What should we be concerned about in terms of transcribing the use of our own phones? In terms of
I
using
will-
the own phone and transcribing it?
Sure. I think where the issue has come up most recently, it's not the phone conversations themselves, whether you're using your personal phone or one purchased by the ANC, no one's transcribing the conversations.
Right.
I think where it's been brought into question is when there are texts between phones, because that is a recorded conversation that may be among with other commissioners or with a business owner. And because that is a saved form of communication that has a clear timeline.
Texts, you said texts.
Like if people are
Yeah.
texting and someone knows that someone's probably texting and they're asking when a FOIA request that they want to see the text from the commissioner, then it becomes problematic. That's my practical answer. I'm sure others may have better legal
Well,
based.
so is the response, I mean, is a good response just simply saying, please do not text me on any ANC matters, period?
I would think that's a great policy.
Okay, good, thanks, great, perfect. Thank
So
you.
I believe,
No,
Commissioner
I'm
Kramer,
still,
you good?
yeah.
You good?
Yeah, I
Okay.
think so, thank you.
Okay, no problem. So Kent, that's it. I think I do want to say to some folks though, I recognize that folks have had trouble with WebEx. Unfortunately, it's the district governments use it. All the district agencies use it. So it is our platform for training. My recommendation is that when you signed up, you registered, and when you registered, you should have received an email, and the email should have had the link, and that is probably the best way to enter. As far as the devices, WebEx is supposed to be able to be used on iPads, iPhones, PCs. So it really should cross all platforms. But if you are having trouble, please contact our office, and our IT specialist, Ronald Gaither, can help you and walk through it with you. As far as the sound, that may not be a WebEx issue, could be an issue with just you connecting with your computer to pick up the sound through the WebEx portal. So we will work with everyone to hopefully troubleshoot all of those. And then the last thing is there were a lot of questions in the chat. My colleague Dawn Dickerson and I tried our hardest to sort of respond, but when we opened up the calls, we didn't quite get to everybody. So if there are questions that you had in the chat that were not answered, feel free to email us at oancs@dc.gov, and we will respond to them. For everyone who is on this call today, though, the new commissioner orientation is this Saturday, begins at 10 o'clock. If you haven't registered, please do so, and we hope to see everybody there as well. That's it for me as the moderator of this.
Thank you for your time and attention. Thank you for everything.
Thank you, everybody, for attending.
Appreciate you.
Look forward to seeing some of you on Saturday, if not all of you.
Yes.
And I definitely look forward to working with all of you in the coming term.
Do not hesitate to call the office for anything.
No, we're not.
And then
We're not shy.
No, and one last thing, this is, as Ken stated, recorded. It will be then uploaded onto our YouTube channel. It's a good opportunity for you to go to our YouTube channel and see some of our trainings that are on there. We have BEGA, we have FOIA, we have zoning. We have some great little tutorials that Dawn Dickerson put together on how to be an effective commissioner. So we're going to drive you to that YouTube channel if it kills us. There you go.
But it won't.
But it won't.
But it won't.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Kent's last words, and then we will end it.
Just good night. Take care. Thank you for the great questions. It was a great opportunity for us to see what issues you're dealing with or what your concerns are. I think we covered a lot of ground, and I really appreciate that opportunity. So like I said, see most of you on Saturday and throughout the year. Please, please, please don't be a stranger. We exist to help you, and keep that in mind.
And thank you to our ASL.
Good night.
Good night, everyone.